something doesn't feel right, doesn't feel aligned. What does that feeling look like? Discontentment, discomfort, anger, unfulfillment, right? Because when you can name it, you can also then start to kind of navigate then what this might look like.
Hello, and welcome to the Mindset and Self-Mastery Show. I'm your host, Nick McGowan. Today on the show with Nichole Lee. Nichole, how you doing?
I'm great, Nick. I'm so excited that I finally made it.
I know.
It's
Just
been
a little peek behind the
journey.
curtains, people. I said to her, I was like, when did we first book this? And she misheard me. And she said 5 years ago. She thought when she first did her own thing. And I was like, 5 years ago? It's like about when I started the podcast. It's literally been about a year.
Yes.
But I think the timing to all of it is something that didn't pass us by, even in us shooting the breeze before we hit record. The past year, let's just say it's been a year, has been monumental. It sounds like in both of our lives, and that's one of the main things we want to get into on the show today. So, Nichole, why don't you get us started? Tell us what you do for a living, and what's one thing most people don't know about you. It's maybe a little odd or bizarre.
Awesome. So as I mentioned, I am Nichole Lee. I serve high-performing individuals who are navigating loss, grief, and major life transitions. I've coined myself the grieving achiever coach because I find that high achievers often get missed in the mix when it comes to our transitions and grief because we're so resilient. We're often the ones that are the strong ones. We're often the ones who can overcome. And so that's the work that I do in supporting individuals through those major transitions.
So it's that one thing that most people don't know about you. It's a little
yeah, thanks.
bizarre.
So what probably odd is that I have the gift of telepathy. So there are individuals who have actually shared with me the telepathy tapes. But yes, I have a unique gift that when I'm connected with people, sometimes in public with strangers, but mostly individuals that I'm connected with, that I actually can hear them, hear what they're saying, and often hear what they're saying before it actually comes out of their mouth, which helps me support my clients in many situations because sometimes it's just an opportunity for me to have that connectedness that creates even more of a bond. But it was something that I was very freaked out about, Nick. It's not something I've had my entire life. Yeah. Yes. And it just came about. I have other gifts as well, but that was the one that was like, is this a real thing? And then when I started telling a few people, coming out of what sometimes people say the spiritual closet, someone sent me the telepathy tapes and I'm like, this is a real thing, not just woo-woo, but like there's some science around this. So yes, that's one of my weird or interesting things about myself.
That is definitely an interesting thing because I think even if most people would say it, most people would be lying. But that's one of those things where, look, let's just be real. There might be people that listen to this and go, wow, that's total bullshit. I don't think it makes any sense. Other people are listening that are like, preach because I do it or what have you.
Exactly.
I've heard of somebody else that does it. But for the most part, the people listening to the show are open, but also kind of skeptical in certain ways.
Yes.
And when we think about telepathy or telekinesis or even what are the ones where they'll listen from like thousands of miles away?
Oh,
or
like even remote viewing.
Stuff. Yeah, exactly.
Like remote viewing.
Yeah, there are documentations of people doing it.
Yes,
like,
exactly.
Literally people doing it. And lab documentation of them doing it to people. So it's real. It's also science driven. And I think sometimes we as people can kind of shit on science either way, where we go, well, science doesn't understand it yet. Or science didn't tell me that this thing is real, so therefore. And I think we miss the gray area where the science is actually constantly evolving because we're constantly understanding, just like we are with ourselves. Like, this might be a thing you were able to do 30 years ago, but now you can do it because of the context and the time. So have you actually broken that down a bit? Like what happened to be able to unlock it?
Yeah, that's a great point, Nick. And what made me, before I jump to that, it makes me think of a lot of the studies they've done with twins, for example. And twins having that connection or hearing each other's thoughts or, they have them. There's been a few experiments even online, right, where the twins are between doors and they're picking the same numbers and colors and things of that nature. So it's very interesting, as you mentioned, the energetics, because there is an element that we really are connected. And to your point, what we start to learn about our ability to be connected is no different than sometimes when people are in the same room and you can literally feel the energy shift.
Yeah.
It's very similar to that. So I have that gift as well, but that's where I start to explain to people who may be like, this sounds really odd. I always start with something like that. Have you ever walked into a room and just with the room, you either felt lighter or brighter because Nick was smiling? Or have you gone in the room and Nichole and you just automatically knew this meeting was going to be a piece of, was going to be a hot mess, right? And people are like, yes. I'm like, that is the energy exchange, right?
Yeah.
So I just wanted to share that. The other thing you mentioned around the question, to your point of, I probably had some of these gifts for a very long time. I can think about when I was a small child of just, I'm hypersensitive as well, the sensitivities and things of that nature. I would say what really put all of this online was when my mother passed away. And my mother has spiritual gifts, which she would be seen as what people call a psychic or clairvoyant. She had the ability to see and connect. But because of the experiences she had, especially in that time, we think about the 80s, 90s. I mean, more people have become more comfortable with this recently. Right? Like this is not, we think of the Clio phone line and people are like, what the hell is going on?
Well, that ended up being nonsense too. That sucked.
But
It made it even worse.
So just, I don't want to get too far off the rails, but so I grew up with someone who had those gifts, but didn't necessarily exercise them all the time. So when we mention that, it's similar to someone having a parent that's an artist and something happens and they don't paint, but you have the gift of painting and you don't realize it right till later when you take an art class. It was very similar to me. My mother passed away and all of a sudden these things went online. I had a greater sense of sensitivity. I was seeing and feeling things very differently. I actually had some illnesses that they say sometimes can be common when you have a sense of awakening. And then it was just over time as I started working with clients, Nick, I was doing energy healing work. And with the energy healing work that I do, I connect with someone remote. So I left corporate in the midst of COVID. So there was no meeting people in person. So what would start to happen is I'd follow kind of the formula that you're supposed to, right, for this energy healing type work called emotion code and body code. And then what started happening is I'd actually hear the person telling me. So it wasn't me connecting and saying, oh, Nick, it's grief, because I know we're going to talk a bit about that. It's grief at 24. It was the person telling me that it was grief at 24 and all the things. And that's really what had me connect to it. And then I freaked out because nobody told me like that was going to start happening. But that's really, oh, and then you're going to start hearing animals and all the things. And I'm like, what is happening?
Check.
And then, and I'm like, Nick, I want to go. And this is the thing, I think with anything, whether it's success or certain skills, there's this part of wanting to be normal. Like, how do I go back into the box, right? Like, how do I go, how do I take off these glasses that I can see everything? So that's really what happened. And that was, my mother passed away in 2018. So soon after she passed, all of these things, I call them, came online. Because it's similar to what you said is, I believe they were always there, but there was something that activated them, right? Brought the remembrance back, brought the connection back that they were now turned on. The lights were just off for a while, for 40 something years.
Yeah. Even when you think of like genetic work, we have genes that are literally just off. Which if they were turned on in certain people, it's turned on and they can supercompute or what have you, like it's in there. Yeah. Well, I was just going to go back to the science too. Like we have those people, and I'm not going to name people or anything, but just the types of people that want to use that in potentially a bad way.
Yes.
Or turn people into like basically superheroes or whatever and turn them into super armies or whatever that is. Yeah. And then there's also the going through the life things to unlock and to understand it, which I think also ties into all the stuff we see, like even with AI. Like everybody is just being inundated with everything AI. And there seems to be different camps where it's like people are totally pro AI or people are totally anti. I'm more of the anti-generative because it takes away from being able to understand how the things work. And even to the point now where like I can feel myself, I'm like, this thing could just be generated. I'm like, but what are the components to build it? How do I do that? How do I understand the steps so that I understand myself within those as well? Which is a different level of self-awareness and probably I don't know, sadism to like fucking beat upon yourself to go fucking do the thing. But to not take ourselves away from that and to unlock those pieces. I always find it interesting how people will end up in a situation and go, I didn't see how this would have lined up, but now that I'm here, I see how this stuff is lined up. And even like, holy shit, if you would have told me I was going to do this 15, 20 years ago, I'd have laughed at you or told you to screw off or whatever. And now here I am doing it. And like, why didn't I do this 15, 20 years ago, you know?
Yeah. And it's so interesting that you mentioned too around, I love that you use the word unlocking, because oftentimes we aren't taught to see the connectedness, right? And that's where things get almost locked down or suppressed, right? And so when I know a lot of what you talk about is the self-mastery, part of self-mastery is allowing ourselves to be in discovery mode, experimentation mode, right? To be a bit present so that we can see how things are connected. So we unlock the next level. It makes me think about video games. Though I'm not a gamer now, as a kid, I was a gamer, right? The Mario Brothers, we all wanted to get to the next one. He's like, bloop, bloop, right? And then the thing would just explode. And then we're next to level. And then we felt like we were starting over again because the next level was so hard or it was unfamiliar. So I think that's something also just for those that may be like, wow, maybe that's too far out. You can see the connectedness when you think of video games or competitions, right? Because that's unlocking the next level. And the thing you mentioned about AI, I think is really powerful too, that we just need to be mindful, whether it's AI, self-discovery work, whether it's a book, a podcast, whatever the case is. I think because we have so much access to consuming, if we don't pause and actually reflect through our own filter of what that means, you can go through the same thing even if you aren't using AI, right? Mm-hmm. So if I binge watch all of Nick's interviews, right, and I'm gathering all these things and I'm not stopping and saying, but what does that mean to me? Where does it resonate with me? Oh, I can take this piece, but probably not that one. I think that's very similar to what you're talking about with AI. Then you get atrophy. That's literally what happens. You turn off, right? Or you close the door on things that may have been open for you to explore. So I love that you mentioned that because it's such a heightened thing right now. Then I think that to me, regardless of all the other things, it's how are you utilizing it that it helps you expand, elevate, be curious, experiment, challenge, versus allowing it to be a crutch that then you lose some of your own natural superpowers.
And also why? If you think of like creating, let's say art in a sense, you're creating it for the creation of the art.
Yes.
It's truly the process of it. Like one of the things I talk with my podcasters about is the art of the podcast. And the art of these conversations, because this is all that matters. The people that are listening, like you that are listening right now, you're the one that matters. The people that are listening to this that understand and can take from this and go, how does this tie into my world and what do I want to do with it? That's what matters. But it's the journey of it, the process of it. I think sometimes we as people, just to go back to AI, will look to AI to create things because actually it's a deeper systemic problem that's telling us we need to create all the fucking things we can to put all the things out there we can because it's a race to try to get all the content out there, to get all the eyeballs. And nobody really, they're not to say nobody, a lot of people that run that race don't pause and go, wait a minute, are these eyeballs actually doing anything? Like I bring up to people, like I don't post a lot on social media because honestly, that doesn't matter. Because somebody sitting on Instagram, sitting on the toilet, collecting another hemorrhoid doesn't give a fuck about their mindset at that point. And if they do, their mindset should be get the fuck up, wipe your ass, and go to another room.
That is not quite the visual I wanted, but I went with you, Nick. And that's also with my gifts. I have to come back.
And sometimes visuals can be a little
well,
much.
Someone who is a visual person, I think someone else might be staying with you. I was like, I went there, they're pooping, now they're back. Like, what's happening?
Visuals.
And then the part of me, I'm like, what's happening in their mind? And then the little scientist in me. Yes. And I think the thing that we can anchor back in is the part around the belief system, right? So if we buy into the belief that producing this way is going to lead to X, Y, Z, or Z, depending on where you are in the country, right? or I have a belief that that is how I'm going to be valued. We often pass what I say, we look at the fruit, doing all the things, the AI, the task automation. We often don't look at the root. What's
Mm-hmm.
underneath is what you're talking about, right? So if
Yep.
I have a belief that that's going to lead to this, or I have a belief that I have to do it to be cool, or I have a belief that whatever those things are externally driven out of proportion, is then, to your point, how you get to this space. They're
Yeah.
not even doing it from an intentional space. You're doing it to catch up or be in competition. And I think that leads very nicely when we talk about transitions, because many times that's what's happened to many of us on our journey. That happened
Yep.
to me, right? So it took me losing my mom to wake up to see I was in that autopilot external validation race. My belief system was the more I did, the more I showed up, the more accolades I had, the more whatever, the more I should be one, two, three, XYZ, right? And it wasn't until I say all the time, my mother's death was my rebirth. It was literally an awakening to ask these questions, not from judgment, but from curiosity.
Yeah.
Like, who am I? Do I really know who this is? Or is it based on what people told me I am?
Yep.
Am I really fulfilled, or am I just living in what people deem as the happiness? You and I chatted, right, about so oftentimes the money, the accolades. And it's like, it really took my mother dying. My mother was diagnosed in May and died in September. Okay. And it took me saying, if I was on my dying bed and my mother was vivacious and fun and all these and go through that decline, I was like, would all this shit matter? And I didn't like the answer I got. It still chokes me up, right? Because it was like, no,
Yeah.
the money, all the stuff would not matter. So what am I going to do now? Right? And so again, I know we talked to AI, but it's very similar, right? If
Mm-hmm.
you allow yourself to be so consumed that you're not having these curious questions, this is what I believe leads to identity crisis. It's not that you wake up one day at 40. I was 41, my mother passed. It was not like I woke up at 41 and was like, what the hell? No,
Yeah.
it was realizing, I was packing my bag with shit that I didn't even pay attention to. And then someone stopped me enough to look in my bag of life. And it was a lot of stuff in there that was heavy. And it was a lot of stuff in there that I'm like, this ain't mine. This is not it. So I love that you started there, but I think this is where in our own realities, we can connect to those types of questions that sometimes it could be uncomfortable when you get the answer, but that's where the real freedom is. Because
Exactly.
the clarity is when you can do something with it.
Yeah. And it's not like pain stops at that point. And
No.
I think that's a thing that most people probably really understand. Like if I
Mm-hmm.
ask these tough questions, it's probably going to bring pain. So I don't
Right.
want that. Let me go get pie. Let me go get ice
Yes.
cream. Let me go get something that's like a happy. Let me go watch
Yes.
TV or whatever. And it's
Yes.
like, cool. But if we're self-aware of that enough, I do think we as people get to a point where we've had enough.
Mm-hmm.
And even the people that don't do something have still, I'm pretty sure, hit that point. And
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't know where it is in your 20s or 30s or whatever. It's all different for different people. But I suspect that we all go through that where we go, fucking damn it, I'm done with this. It's what happens next then. Because some
Mm-hmm.
people will look at that and go, I said I'm done with this, but holy shit, that's a giant mountain. And they don't do anything. Other
Yeah.
people are like, I'm done with this and I can only see my feet. And I'm just
Yeah.
going to keep walking and keep going. And neither one of them are right or wrong. It's on us to do something with that. But for us to understand why those things are being done and then just asking, are we okay with that? Are we not? So I think about it from the
Yeah.
perspective of people that are in a job right now and
Mm-hmm.
want to start a business or basically not be in their job.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a difference between the people that are like, I hate my job and I don't want to do a thing. I guess I'll become a coach. Like, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the people that are like, I don't feel called to be here anymore. I feel called to
Mm-hmm.
be something else and do something greater that's outside of what they're doing. That's a
Mm-hmm.
different feel and a different vibe, but the steps are still the same. Like you have to take another fucking step. And oftentimes you don't know what's going to happen. But when we get stuck in that shit where it's like, this is just, I was told to go to college. I was told to get married. I was told to have kids. I was told to do this. And like, I'm doing all these things. We have to look at that and go, does that feel right? And I think a lot of people went through something similar in COVID because like everybody was just pushed home instantly. They're like, well, fuck, what do I do? Some people got divorces. Some people had kids. Some people started careers or whatever. But I think about it from the perspective of this show. This is like a lab in a sense where we get to talk about these things and do some of the work now. So when we get into those moments, we go, oh shit, I did some of this work before. So I'm a little bit more prepared. Because really, your character is going to show up. Like whatever you're okay with or wherever you're actually going to be happens in that moment. Like almost how people can say, well, if somebody had a gun to my head, I would fucking knock the gun out and I would kick their ass and I would do all these things. Or reality, you might shit yourself, sit in the corner and cry. Like you don't know. You have no idea.
Yeah.
Until that stuff happens. We can prepare the best that we can in this safe space to do that. So if somebody's in that spot right now, like you and I were years ago to go, this doesn't feel right. Obviously, it's not like Monday you go, this sucks, it doesn't feel right. And Tuesday you told them all to eat a bowl of shit and you moved along by Wednesday. I mean, that might be some people's story, but Thursday's going to be a rough day. Like Thursday, they're like, fuck, all right, what happens now? But that path, and everybody's path looks different in their own way. But you and I took those steps over and over and over. So now that we can look back at that, what sort of guidance and wisdom do you kind of glean from those steps that you took that you can share with people?
Yeah. And I appreciate that you mentioned too, like that the journey may be different in how you get there. I would say one of the things is acknowledging it. Mm-hmm. I think is the first. So many times we aren't fully present and we're not sitting with a little bit of that discomfort to get to a point that says, yeah, this doesn't feel right, right? In my case, it was extreme. I lost my mother. So all the emotions came running, but oftentimes it's those subtle experiences, right? Those subtle discomforts that are happening. So I think acknowledging something doesn't feel aligned anymore, like starting there. And I think too, for high performing people, sometimes we feel like we have to have all the solutions. So we don't even want to acknowledge it because then we have to do all the things. Not like you said, not just the next step, but like, no, I know I acknowledge it. Now I must have a whole spreadsheet and like a plan and like 7 times. It was like, okay, calm down. So I would say acknowledge. I would say the other thing is then I've briefly talked about this a bit is the curiosity, right? Mm-hmm. And allowing yourself to feel into it. So we hear a lot of times, and I feel like sometimes it's become cliche, you have to feel it to heal it. But the science is there as well, right? If you're not connecting to the thoughts, the feelings, it's very challenging to allow your brain and body to come up with solutions outside of what might already be anchored in you. So if you're like, this something doesn't quite feel right. What does it feel like? I often use, if you haven't used a feelings wheel, I think it's awesome. Many of us did not grow up expressing more than angry, sad, mad, and happy, right? So we don't have a vocabulary. So I think sometimes it's that. It's like something doesn't feel right, doesn't feel aligned. What does that feeling look like? Discontentment, discomfort, anger, unfulfillment, right? Because when you can name it, you can also then start to kind of navigate then what this might look like, right? So if I'm like, wow, I'm just not feeling fulfilled anymore, that also opens your mind. Am I unfulfilled with the job? Am I unfulfilled in the environment? Am I unfulfilled with what I'm doing? The focus area, right? Again, you start to become more curious. That starts to unlock, right, different components. The other part then I would say is after you're starting to become a bit more curious, then allow yourself to see what those paths might look like. Oftentimes, especially if you've been anchored in a particular role, your identity can sometimes become collapsed. Mm-hmm. So you're not always looking at what that could afford you. And what I invite high achieving people to do, again, because you're so used to hitting the target and having the answer, is to give yourself permission to dream. Give yourself permission to do a mind map. Give yourself permission to say it could lead to this. In my grand world, I would be a fisherman on a boat catching 2 fish to a speaker, whatever the case is. The reason why I say that as well is we don't realize we're collapsing parts of our brain that doesn't allow us to explore and expand like we were as children. And it's why children can say, I want to be a firefighter and an astronaut and be a Broadway singer in the same vein.
Yep.
Right. And so that's one thing I would also say. When's the last time you allowed yourself to play, explore, dream, look at all the possibilities? Because then you can filter in on your reality. Perhaps I can't leave because I have 2 kids right now, but what can I do that allows me to feel excited, energized, right?
Yeah.
But if you aren't looking at it from that broad base, it becomes very difficult to filter in, because you will look at your reality first. It's very natural. You will look at the bills you have to pay, the people who are leaning on you, and the responsibilities you have. So that's where I would say to kind of inverse that. Allow yourself to dream and then filter your reality into it. And then you can go from there, obviously. And then the last thing I would say to Nick, and I don't know if this was something for you, when you start to make that shift, I think when we talk about kind of the mountaintop, I think what sometimes is the challenge is you realize that many of the people that are around you are very similar to your old identity and who you were. So sometimes wanting to climb the mountaintop, you don't have the mountain climbers in your team, in your tribe, in your crew, right? And so maybe sitting with that of why it feels so difficult to even think about the next step, because there is a reality around loneliness. There is a reality of the grief that can come with becoming this other person and not seeing any of the people coming with you.
Sure.
So I just want to acknowledge that, because that's something I saw for myself. And I didn't lose all my friends, and, but from a career perspective, I didn't realize how much my identity and so many of the relationships that I kept on a day-to-day basis were tied to my career. And when I left, no one told me I was going to grieve, because I left on my own accord. No one tells you when you make the decision that you can still grieve like the person who was laid off or the person that retired, right? Those are just a few things. Again, the acknowledge, start expressing the emotions or figuring out what those feelings are, being curious where that takes you to unlock some of the Nick codes, unlock some of the codes. And then the fourth is giving yourself permission to be more expansive, kind of look at how it might take you into different spaces and places.
I love all of that. I'm not the type of person that's like, everything needs to be a framework, but certain people need certain boxes of things to go, cool, I conceptually understand this. We as humans need that for our brains. Like, we even talked about stories. I think we talked a little bit about that before, but of like how people position things to be able to talk about stories. But we've been doing that since we were before cave people. Like we're on the coast in Africa as like maybe a few hundred people way back in the day telling stories about things and starting to take from there. We all have these interpretations of stuff, and we create different stories inside of our minds of, well, I can't do that right now, or I can't do this, can't do that. Obviously, I think about mindset a lot. I talk about it on the show, and I don't name it cheesily, like this is a mindset thing. There's certain times that are really intentionally mindset driven. And when I think of mindset, I think it is literally your mind intentionally in action based on bias, based on experiences that you've had before, where you go into something and say, I'm going to fucking figure this thing the fuck out. Like, there's no other way around it. You're going to figure that out. Like, your intention is to go through and figure that thing out. Even if the thing is, I can't do it. Like, I don't have enough resources or skills or whatever it is. The intention and the force is there. There's a difference with the high achievers that constantly live in that, from the high achievers that are self-aware enough to understand that they constantly live in that. So all the things you're saying, I think, are critically important, and also understanding about ourselves. Like, somebody who's a dreamer, like, I love to sit here, like, I'll set a timer for 15, 20 minutes and let me just go in my mind palace and work through the thing.
I love that, your mind palace.
Yeah, well, that's where it is. And like, I'm creating all this stuff. And then from there go, cool, how do I reverse engineer it? How do I tie it into this world where other people are like, things need to be calculated? Great, I hear you. And also, if you were to look at this a little differently and tie your calculations into it, understanding the organism that's operating this, then you do it however you're doing it. I think big thing that we're talking about is being self-aware enough to look at a thing and go, does this feel right? And if it doesn't, why is it? I even think from like a macro perspective, I have different times where I feel off. And I know if I'm off and I'm not naturally joyous and curious, then something's off. Like something's wrong.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's the wrong relationship, or it's the wrong client, or it's the whatever, like a thing that shouldn't be anymore. And you go, all right, cool, I'm going to do something with it. Sometimes it's also, I need to not sit at my fucking computer, and I should probably go step outside and breathe fresh air.
Yeah.
And understanding that enough for each of us to go, is it a critical thing, or is it just a small little glint of something that's saying, you know what, actually, you want to do more of this, where we step away from ourselves from that. I don't think everybody is super or hyper intuitive, but I do think we all have that in us. It's inside of all of us.
Yeah, and I love that, Nick, because I think it goes back to what you were talking about when we started as a civilization, right? We were more in tune. And I think the thing that you're talking about too is the permission to be embodied. Now, recognizing there could have been adverse experiences that created that disconnection of your own trust, of your intuition, of your insight. That's why too, when we start looking at beliefs, if you're like, I don't believe I'm worthy, that narrative is ingrained in you, right? Or again, I've worked with individuals super successful, but were not embodied, right? They got on autopilot in the mind of success and resilience and the adrenaline, all those things for survival, but hadn't connected to what we're talking about of does it feel aligned, and giving yourself permission, right? To say, does this feel aligned? Does this feel right for me? And so I love that you say that, because I think that is where sometimes there's a disconnect of even allowing yourself to do that. And even what you mentioned with the person who may have the plan, I think one of the things that we've learned about the brain and body as well is the way you change things is to create the resistance, right? To pull the rubber band, right? To create unfamiliar experiences. That is where neuroplasticity comes from. So when I have individuals similar to what you mentioned, they're like, I always have a plan. I'm like, I'm going to invite you, because that's what you hired me to do, was to challenge you, right? I'm going to invite you to do it this other way. And while you're doing it, similarly, why does it feel so uncomfortable to dream? The narrative starts showing up. Dreaming didn't make you any money, right? Dreaming was going to have you on the side of the road. Dreaming was not going to pay bill, whatever that is, right? Because that's what's driving it. And as you're doing that, then you can allow yourself to also have compassion to say, you know what? I'm doing this for me, not because I have to. So I think that's the other part when we talk about the mindset work. We know that the mind and body, again, works on familiarity, right? And so if we're not allowing ourselves to have these unfamiliar experiences, the same thing when we have challenging experiences, what I've continued to learn is the experiences are about the growth and learning. The only way our brain and body learns how to grow is if we give it these new experiences that allow it to, right, expand. And so it goes back to the AI thing, right? So that's the thing I think is very interesting, again, with people who are automatically driven and have been resilient, but sometimes that's based in your bubble that you've created in resilience. And so what happens when you're in unfamiliar situations, sometimes this is where it also is mask of the self-doubt, the insecurities that no one else sees, right? Because you're so used to being able to use that playbook that worked for so long. And now when your playbook isn't working, if your belief system says you should have figured it out and know how to do it, then this is where you start to go through the cycle, right? So I love that you mentioned that about, it's almost what they call like the fitness, right? We're talking about mental and emotional fitness, spiritual fitness. That is doing the reps, but sometimes doing that different exercise that gets you to work on other parts of your muscle, right? Your mental, physical, and emotional muscle.
And there's stuff that's just underneath it all that we are often unaware of, those subconscious limiting beliefs. Even with what you just said, I learned about a concept a few years ago called our subconscious winning strategy, which is basically a strategy we develop in our formative years to say, this is how you stay safe or loved, or this is how you win. And then you turn that into a strategy that becomes who you are.
Yes.
And literally when I read that, I was at a crux in life where I was on the tipping point of it. an existential crisis. And it was like, everything you've done to this point isn't going to get you any further. So what are you going to do now? It's like, motherfucker.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's true.
The thing that's interesting too that we're wrapping it around is the level of distractions, the level of narratives, the level of things outside of you.
Noise.
That if you were right in nature and figuring these things out, it might be a little bit different. So I think that's the other thing that sometimes we're not taking into account. We are creators and consumers. So when your eyes are constantly open to these different things coming in, when you're hearing different things coming in, when you're feeling different things coming in, it can alter your state of what you think is your play or your rule book, right? So you could have an anchoring belief of one thing and then not realize that you're literally taking in all this other data. It's no different than what happens with AI when they're like, wow, the data is biased with this and, you know, certain backgrounds and people and things, right? Because the data that was utilized to create the algorithm or create the formula is missing some things. And so we look at it in ourselves, to your point, like, oh, I've been running this body or mind intelligence, but it doesn't have all the data. It's only using the data that I created the initial plan. And so just what you are saying is like, okay, then I need to actually look at what are the inputs that I've been taking in? What have I been consuming?
Yeah.
And that's the presence that we talked about. If I'm not present asking these, then the subconscious can't come to the surface for me to actually have a conversation with it. It just keeps running.
Exactly. And obviously we're not saying to just pause all of the world and say, all right, well, this thing just happened, so I'm going to do this. I think there are certain times where we can, like, I have gotten to a stage in life where, because of the business I have, clients I have, et cetera, and how I work, I am super self-aware of this shit. So if I need to, I can pause. Because typically, even if it's between meetings, like, or that was a lot, I need a minute, and just being able to pause and breathe through it. I get that there are people that have multiple kids and they have this and they have that and they have all these things. And my almost immediate question is, why? Like, why do you have all those things? Are those all aligned? Because if they aren't, that's like issue number one in a sense. Yeah. But I've heard from different people that are like, well, I can't just pause the entire world to just do all this work. And we're not saying that. We are saying to, in the moments when you can, to then think about it and work on it. Even if it's later on where you go, you know what? The whole fucking house is asleep. This thing is just gnawing at me. Sit there for a minute. Just sit at your coffee table and just breathe for a minute and think through it and feel into it. I love that you pointed out the emotional wheel, because most people are really unaware of that. And most people that are men specifically have a hard time naming things outside of the four that you named. When if they're angry, they might really actually be disappointed. Yeah. Or they're grieving from something because they had an expectation. And not to be sexist in a sense, to say it's all men, because it's just people. But oftentimes as men, we can go, well, there's the thing. And I said the thing that I said, and I have a penis, you should listen to me. And that's not really true. Like, no, and you have to use your words better. So I challenge us as people to go, if you're saying to yourself right now, or even listening to this and saying, fuck you both, you don't understand because my life is hectic and blah, blah, blah. Heard. And also we understand. It's in those moments to be able to do something in the moment that you can, to then say, all right, what do I do differently next time? But not beat ourselves up. And I think that's a thing you're probably pretty good at too, of like, give yourself a break every once in a while. Because if you need a break, go take the break instead of fucking snapping at your kids or losing your shit on somebody, especially like in a corporate environment. Like if you've been in corporate for more than a year, you've seen somebody in a meeting melt down. Yes. And it's how they rebound from there. I've seen people melt down and come in like 3 hours later to another meeting and go, sorry, everyone, I apologize. Here's what's happening in life. Other people, it's like, that was the crux of them breaking. But I could always tell there were other people in the meeting that were like right there. They were ready to break. And everybody's kind of at that point. So we all just need to be restful in a sense with what we're doing, give ourselves grace and all. But for the people that are on their path towards self-mastery and working through this stuff, and trying to find grace within themselves in these moments, what's your advice for those people?
Yeah, I would say to the point that you mentioned really quick too, about honoring your reality. right? And so I often challenge clients as well. What's your powerful 1 minute thing, right? You can take deep breaths for 1 minute. You can do tapping for 1 minute. Then we get to the fabulous five. Can you carve out 5 minutes for whatever it is? I don't care if it's journaling, whatever, to your point. Because also what's happened from a high performance perspective, and we're taught this is why I said the external thing. You need 30 minutes to meditate, 20 minutes. Like everybody has all these rules. And I'm like,
Yeah.
if you've got 5 minutes, if you could wake up 5 minutes earlier and look outside and stare at trees, and now you get an epiphany for the rest of your day, amazing. So I just, to your point, I just wanted to anchor in that is like, we all have a minute in the shower. Like, let's get to stacking stuff. We all have 5 minutes. We might not have the 30, we might not have the hour, we might not have whatever. So that's challenging us to look at where we do have the time and being intentional of folding in whatever that is that we're doing. The second part that you mentioned too, I think this is that compassion and grace piece that may be a muscle that you need to build. Again, if we look at, I always go back to belief system. If you believe that you're not worthy of rest or time, or it always has to be you, or this is going to be challenging for you, right? If you were taught that you can't have grace because then you'll lose your edge, well, we'll probably have to work through why you were told you can't have love for yourself or whatever, because that's usually why we're not doing it. Again, many times we came into the world with love, with joy, with compassion, wanting to hold the other person's hand. You know, when we were little and someone would fall, we wanted to go over and help them, right? We wanted someone to hold us. So I think that's also part of it, is acknowledging that things may have happened, right? And as you acknowledge it, you also can say, and I'm not going to continue. And then what is that one little element of compassion that you can share for yourself? And the other thing I would say too is there's been a lot of this self work, doing all the work yourself. We are communal, tribal people. And I always say, just like the neighbor who would borrow a cup of sugar, you might need to borrow a cup of compassion. Right? You may have to ask someone to help you be more loving to yourself, be more compassionate to yourself. You may need to find that other people are giving you that love. And I think that sometimes that's lost, Nick. If I'm already burnt out, if I'm already feeling less than, if I'm already feeling lonely, me trying to figure it out myself is not always going to help, right? And one thing I will say that drives me bonkers is this: no one's coming to save you. I'm like, that sometimes work for those who are like, I got up and I did it. I'm looking at the stats. I'm looking at the data around the world. People are lonelier than ever. People are suicidal. So saying that is not helping a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
What will happen is people will come and save the day. They may be that person that tells you you're awesome in the grocery store. What happens though is we have to build because they can't sustain us. There will always be people who may drop in to help us, but they can't sustain us because they're not always there. So I just wanted to share that too, because there may be people who are sitting here that have also believed that they've got to always fix it, that there's nobody who will say they love you or be there for you. And it may take you some time to find those people. I know we were chatting, as we say, behind the curtain. Now you're going to have me using that. It's how important it is to find your community. And it may take some time to do that, you know, and you owe that to yourself. But that's something I just wanted to anchor in. And I'm, as you can tell, I'm very passionate about it, because I'm finding that's where the loneliness is coming from. And that's where people are silently suffering, because they're like, I got to figure it all out myself. And sometimes I need somebody else. That's why I say the cupper, I need to borrow. Nick, today, you're making me feel like I got a lot of courage. I'm going to borrow it today, and I'm going to build it up for myself. And I'm going to need Nick to text me to remind me of my mission, because for the last couple of weeks, I've been feeling like crap.
It's important to know that because we all, I think, innately understand that even if you feel like a solo person or like you're a lone wolf type person or what have you, like we still need, or at least could always use, somebody else's help in certain ways. Some people are more community oriented. I've learned even about myself, I'm more of an introvert than I originally thought I was, but I thrive in certain extroverted situations because it is part of like it scratches so many different itches, opens up different doors and challenges. And some things are weird and awkward, especially like making friends in your 40s or like dating and shit like that. You're like, what the fuck is this?
I'm single, Nick. And man, I'm 49 and man, this dating pool, I'm trying to put my pinky toe in it, Nick, but I won't even take my pinky toe out.
Yeah. My pinky toe ain't touching any apps or anything either. But understanding that, like, I think on that note, let's say a relationship or a job or something where you go, my identity is in this thing. Your identity may be right now. And that's a thing that you will continue to carry on in whichever way. But we are the things that are most important in this. If we have been an identity, because like even athletes, they play in a league for so long, they do all these things and they get out. And what do they do from there? And like, you became that identity, but that's not who you actually are. And I think us understand that you got to take it day by day at times. Like if you're feeling off today, tomorrow is going to be different. And if you're feeling off perpetually, you get to then be able to ask, what do I do with this? And like we've talked about, being able to actually play through that and understand. So I thought this has been great. Literally a year in the making. What a wonderful episode.
Nick and Nick, we made it.
Yeah, exactly. Yay. So it's been awesome having you on. I appreciate your time and your wisdom. Before I let you go, where can people find you and where can they connect with you?
Thanks so much. I just want to say thanks so much for the opportunity, Nick. It's just been such an honor. It's been so great connecting with you. I'm on most social channels. I would say I'm on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn. I also now on Substack, and I have it's called the Grieving Achiever Sanctuary. So if you are a grieving achiever wanting a safe space to connect with other people who are grieving and achieving, that would be a great place to probably land as well. And then obviously, my website has a contact space, so you can reach out to me that way too.
Perfect. And I'll have that stuff in the show notes too. Again, it's Nichole. It's been great having you on. I appreciate your time today.
Thanks, Nick.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you enjoyed the episode, please jump over to Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you consume podcasts and subscribe, rate, and leave a 5-star review. It's very much appreciated and also helps other people find the show and experience healing just like us. Please also head over to our website, themindsetandselfmasteryshow.com, where you can check out all of our episodes and find additional resources to help you manage your mindset as you seek self-mastery. So with that, thank you. And remember, your mindset matters, and so do you.